Hello there.
You know what I've come for. This is the way.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pod Awakens as we relaunch the show here for the Bad Batch. So yeah, we're going to talk some Star Wars The Bad Batch cartoon series here on the Pod Awakens. It's just me today, Jordan Wiegand. First thing I want to say is if you haven't followed us on any of our other shows, we are kind of under all one podcasting network now called 14301 Productions, which includes this show. It includes To the Infinity Saga and Beyond, my MCU podcast, Behind the Dreams podcast, which is our Disney Parks podcast, and also two soccer-themed podcasts, Stoppage Time Soccer Show and Stateside Soccer Show. So that is part of our network now. You can follow that on Twitter at 14301prod, where we'll post all the episodes, links there, as well as on each show's social networks. So let's go ahead and get started with Bad Batch. Just kind of first impressions here is we're going to talk both the first episode, Aftermath, and the second episode, Cut and Run, here in this episode. This was just overall impressions first is one, the animation of this show is wonderful. It's really great animation, beautiful animation, really enjoying everything that has, I mean, like, it's even better than the Clone Wars Season 7 animation, which I thought was really great. It's definitely better than the Rebels animation, which I thought was good. I mean, a lot of people really slag off that animation, but because it does look a little cheaper, I guess, but I thought the style for Rebels for that worked a lot. It would have been a lot better if it fit in this style now, because now we're going to have, if you watch Clone Wars, then watch Bad Batch, and then watch Rebels, you'll kind of be like, oh, this is a different style. But it was very, Rebels was also just very Ralph McQuarrie concept art style, where the lightsabers had points, and Darth Vader looks kind of like the Ralph McQuarrie paintings, concept arts from the, before Star Wars A New Hope came out in 1977. So, just overall, the animation of this is a step up from Season 7 of the Clone Wars. It looks gorgeous. If they're going to keep making animation shows like this, then sign me up, because this is going to be a heck of a ride. This is going to be 16 episodes, it says. I'm assuming Episode 1 is only counted as one. That's what everybody seems to be assuming, but sometimes those are given 3 production numbers, so it might only be 13 weeks or 12 weeks of episodes. I'm not really sure. Hey, if it's 12 or 16 weeks of episodes, that's still really great. That's more than we're getting on the live action side for some of those shows, so I will definitely love getting all of this Star Wars content here. So, like I said, the animation's gorgeous. I think the character work is really great. I've always kind of said that, like, I've enjoyed Rebels more than Clone Wars. And I think the reason for that is the character focus of Rebels, where it's focusing on one group of people. When you're looking at, like, Sabine and Ezra and Kanan and Hera and Zeb, Chopper, like, that's your crew. Clone Wars, you're seeing, like, some episodes are just the droids, some episodes are just Jar Jar mixed with maybe, like, Mace Windu. Some episodes you're getting Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka, which is, like, the main crew you kind of focus on, but then some episodes you're getting, a Padme episode, or a 3PO R2 episode, or Yoda training younglings. and or like a droid. I mean, or a clone-based episode, like Rookies in season 1. So there's this kind of like, or like a Maul episode. See, I can just keep listing them. All these characters that you're like, okay, well, this week we're getting this week we're getting that, the following week we're getting this. And it kind of leads to this uneven, like, you're more invested in some of these characters than you are in some of these. Like, there was an arc with, what's his name? Meebo, I think, with the droids. It's like a 3 or 4 episode arc in season 5 or 6. I forget which one. That I really struggled through when I was watching Clone Wars, because it was just not much going on in there, and it didn't really affect much of the overarching story, but I still want to watch all the episodes, so I still watched it. With Rebels, you were focused on that one crew, and I think this is kind of like a mix of both, right? You're getting the Clone Wars era, the Clone Wars animation, the Clone Wars tone, but you're getting that focused lens of, we're focusing on these people, the Bad Batch, these clones. And it's kind of like how Rebels was keyed in on this group of rebels. You're getting keyed in on this group of clones. And this is who you're following throughout the journey. So it's going to lead to a lot more character-based interactions, a lot more character development, and but still during a great era of the, right immediate aftermath of Revenge of the Sith, going on from there. So that is kind of like my overall impressions of this. I think Bad Batch might actually end up being one of the best of the animation series when it's all said and done. We'll see. I mean, there's definitely going to be some filler episodes. There's going to be some other episodes, but this first episode was amazing, and then the character work in the second episode I thought was really great too. So let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into these episodes. So we start off with the Clone Wars font, right? The Clone Wars logo, and it, just like it does in the trailer, it kind of fades into or burns into the Bad Batch logo. And we even get Tom Kane as the narrator, like we do in the Clone Wars. We didn't get that in episode 2, and I'm sure that was just a thing for episode 1, kind of being like, you watch the Clone Wars, now you watch this, and we're segueing into this type of thing. We're segueing into the Bad Batch. And here's what it says. Separatists pushed to the brink. Republic forces continue to mount victories on battlefronts across the galaxy. After the Jedi Knights thwarted an attempt to kidnap Chancellor Palpatine, the evil droid General Grievous retreated to the Outer Rim. With his legions of battle droids severely depleted, Grievous mounts a desperate and brutal counterattack across several star systems. We find Republic clone troopers locked in a deadly combat on the besieged world of Kaller, led by Jedi Master Depa Billaba. They struggled to hold their position as they wait for reinforcements to arrive. So that opening actually shows us scenes from Revenge of the Sith animated in this animation, and it looks great. And there's been this call recently for these, this animation version of Revenge of the Sith. I don't think it's ever going to happen, because I don't think they want to rewrite, George's film. But I think it would be a fun little thing if you're like, okay, well, we're going to mix like the last of the, the last episodes of the Clone Wars in with animated versions of Revenge of the Sith, so you get a full story mixed in with this aftermath episode of Bad Batch, and you get like this huge arc, this huge story. Now, of course, you could just go ahead and watch probably like the first 2 episodes of that Siege of Mandalore arc of Clone Wars. Watch Revenge of the Sith, watch the last 2 of that, and then watch this. And it'll kind of be like, it's not all the way chronologically, but it's probably the best you're ever going to get in that sense. But there's also people that have been, cutting this stuff together fan-wise. And now they can add some of this stuff in, so that's really cool, I think. And I hope that we get something like that. As long as they make it clear that they're not like making this to go against George, but if they're just like combining some of this stuff, it'll make it more consistent than having this jarring cut of, oh, now we're going to live action, now we're going to cartoon, now we're going to live action. But I doubt it ever happens. But it was cool to just see some of these scenes. You know, Obi-Wan chopping up a Magna droid, the bodyguard droid for Grievous, and Grievous escaping in his pod. Like, those were the scenes as they're, you know, rescuing Chancellor Palpatine. That's like what's going on right at this time. Or it just happened right before it. Because what we hear as soon as the Bad Batch enter this show is that they're receiving word that the war should be almost over because Obi-Wan has found General Grievous and has initiated a skirmish with Grievous on Utapau. So that means that this is happening right before Order 66, right? We kind of know how that goes. Obi-Wan is on Utapau when Order 66 happens, and this is supposed to be kind of cluing you in, if you're already familiar with stuff, that, oh geez, he's already fighting Grievous. Like, if you haven't watched some of this stuff, or, you know, this is kind of helps set the place that if you didn't know from the opening where we were, once they mention Utapau, they mention him making contact with Grievous and starting to bring, starting that battle. You understand that if you have watched Revenge of the Sith, okay, it's starting, right? Like, the Order 66 is right around the corner. And, as soon as you see Depa Billaba, if you're a fan of Rebels, or you read some of the Kanan stuff, you understand that Kanan is her apprentice. For people that are not familiar, it'd be like, well, they didn't mention Kanan at all in this, right? His name is Caleb Dune. That is Kanan. When Kanan was a Jedi, he was Caleb Doom. Once his master dies and he goes off in hiding and stuff, he has to change his name, right? Because then the Empire would be like, well, we found him. We found the Jedi. It's Caleb right here. So naming himself Kanan. Becoming more like a smuggler. Some of that stuff is covered in A New Dawn, the canon book. The Kanan book. That's kind of a tongue twister. And then, of course, that's covered in Rebels as well. But we get to see Depa Billaba here, and then we see, Kanan has brought the Bad Batch. That's their rendezvous. He brings them to the skirmish. They help out a bit. But it's like right when they're getting sent to go help that Captain Gray gets the call from Palpatine. Execute Order 66. And they start firing on Depa Billaba while Kanan is going off with the Bad Batch. Kanan hears this, turns around, and starts running back towards his master. And, he's going to try to help, but then she tells him to run. He starts running back towards the Bad Batch to try to escape. He sees them, and he thinks, obviously, these are clones. They're going to turn on me, too. And he takes off. He says, stay away from me, and he runs off into the woods. And the Bad Batch are confused. Most of them are confused. Hunter, he's the leader of the Bad Batch. He's my favorite character of the Bad Batch so far. He, tries to go help Kanan or Caleb, whatever you want to call him at this point. And he goes with Crosshair. And Crosshair does have a malfunction. He still has a chip or something in his head, as we'll learn later. And he says the famous line from the last arc of the Clone Wars. And also, I think that was before then when Fives had his chip issue when it went off early. Good soldiers follow orders. And that's how you know, okay, he's getting that Order of 66 from somewhere, right? Like, his chip is still working at some point. And we get Hunter and Crosshair going into the woods looking for him, and Hunter has no idea that Crosshair is kind of infected with this, because he's somebody that never follows orders, as we hear later. Crosshair doesn't. And we get Crosshair starting to fire at him, and Hunter is like, what are you doing, right? Hunter chases Kanan, trying to help him out. Kanan jumps over like this big waterfall river thing, and takes off. And Hunter says to Crosshair that the boy, fell. Like, he stunned him while he was mid-jump, and he died at the bottom. And once that happens, Order 66 is happening all over the world. The clones are confused. They get sent back to... They get sent over to Kamino. They go back home to Kamino. We do see a unnamed Jedi. People haven't really been able to link the lightsaber, I don't think, from what I've seen. That is being carried on like a stretcher type thing, like with the sheet covering them, and the hand falls with the lightsaber, and the lightsaber falls out of their hand. And Hunter kind of gives it a look, and they're not really sure what's going on, and everybody's kind of acting weird. Clones in the Clone Wars, if you haven't watched that, if you just skip to watch Bad Batch, clones in the Clone Wars all have personality, right? Like, they made a big effort, other than in Episode 2 and 3 of Star Wars Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, to give these clones and these people personalities that differ, so that way you can kind of tell the difference between Rex and Fives and Hunter and Echo and all these characters from all of these properties. And now they're kind of acting all the same, so that kind of makes them think something's wrong. But also these Bad Batch are usually outcasts, so some of them don't think anything's wrong. Like Wrecker, I think he mentions, like, no, everything seems the same to me because they're ignoring us. But you can kind of feel it, right? They're stripped of their, as they've kind of talked about in interviews, the people that made the show, they're stripped of their individuality now, where their clone armor is just back to the standard white, right? They don't have all these different colors, these different looks. So they're back to like standard white. They're all kind of following orders. They're all, walking the same, talking the same. They're back to like reset almost, right? They're just following their orders now. They've lost all that personality that made them unique. So yeah, they get on Kamino. We get our introduction to Omega, who is a clone, as we'll learn. A female clone of Jango Fett is what I would still assume because of the accent. I know some people are thinking a Palpatine clone or whatever. I doubt that the Kamino people have gotten the okay to make anything of Palpatine. I mean, it could be a cool link to Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, but I think some of this stuff may have already been in the works before that movie. So, Crosshair kind of accuses Hunter of letting the Jedi escape, meaning Caleb. Then we get to this speech that Palpatine's making, obviously in front of, this is still in Revenge of the Sith. I believe this is the same exact speech about, leaving him deformed like the Jedi. Left him deformed. He's making making the Galactic Republic into the first Galactic Empire. So we're getting that same sort of speech. And all the clones are kind of eating it up, except for the Bad Batch. They're kind of looking around like, oh, what is this guy talking about, right? Then we get Tarkin, everybody's favorite Grand Moff before he's a Grand Moff, here, Admiral Tarkin here, who's going to test the Bad Batch, right? Like, Tarkin's not a big fan of clones. I think even in this, he kind of mentions maybe, that they're going to stop production of the clones. They're probably going to go into more recruits type of thing when he's talking with Lama Su. And he kind of pulls this tactic by saying, our contract's null and void because you signed it with the Republic and now we're an empire. Which is kind of a jerk move, right? Like, that's an awful jerk thing to do by saying, well, technically, It's not the case. We're no longer that thing. We are now this thing. So we don't have to honor that contract. And I think what's interesting too is that like clones have actually been really good at shots, right? And stormtroopers are not. And I think this is kind of a reference to that when Tarkin says that soldiers, like recruited soldiers, could provide the service at half the cost, and Lama Su says that the skill and accuracy of the clone troopers are better than over any recruited person. And Tarkin responds that he will be the judge of that. This is obviously, I think, a reference to the difference between clone troopers and stormtroopers. Clone troopers, we see, actually make their shots most of the time, right? When we're watching them, they're very accurate because they're based off Jango Fett. Then you get the stormtroopers, which are just recruited people, and they're missing everything, right? And that's kind of the joke with stormtroopers, that they're always missing the heroes, right? And that they're worthless. We kind of already got introduced to Omega. She then tries to sit at Clone Force 99's table. That's the Bad Batch. This whole food fight kind of starts here, and Omega's kind of sticking up for them. Then we get this battle simulation that Tarkin puts them through as a test, and he starts using live rounds for them, which is dangerous and kind of a jerk move again, right? And we get this situation where we have the really cool battle idea here where, like, Crosshair asks Wrecker for the knife, and he throws the knife, and then Crosshair shoots it with, like, this electrical shot, right? That then pushes the knife with electricity all around it into the droid, defeating the droid on the last droid. And it was a really cool battle part. And Tarkin's watching this. He's like, well, maybe there's some use to these people, right? But we need to know where their loyalties lie. So they tell him that there are some insurgents on a certain planet. Where was the planet? On Alderaan. Onderon. If I said that right. Onderon, yeah. I know it sounded like the first time I said it was Alderaan. But it's Alderaan. It says that there's some insurgents there to be dealt with. When Echo asks about the insurgents, Tarkin says that they're separatist forces seeking to keep the galaxy at war. And then that, he would give them a favorable report for the Imperial Army if they do this. So they go to Onderon system. They're looking over at the camp, and they're doing their tech scan. There is no droids there. It's actually human bodies. Humanoids. And you're seeing all these different aliens, humans, Twi'leks, all these different humanoid aliens there, and led by Saw Gerrera. So if you don't know who Saw Gerrera is, he was originally introduced in the Clone Wars. He was in Rebels, and he was most famously portrayed by Forrest Whitaker in the Rogue One film, 2016. Jeez, that's already 5 years ago. But yes, so he's in Rogue One. He was based off of, his first original appearance was in the Clone Wars. They kind of adapted him into Rogue One. Then he was in Rebels as kind of like an overlap there. Then you also see him in Fallen Jedi, Jedi Fallen Order, the video game with Cal Kestis. And then you get Bad Batch now. So pretty interesting to kind of see him, getting more and more canon appearances. It's really cool because, seeing these little links and a character that was just kind of like in a 3-episode arc in the Clone Wars to get adapted into the movies, to get adapted back into a Rebels series, to get adapted into Bad Batch in a video game, Jedi Fallen Order. It's like, what a ride Saw Gerrera's character has been through. But, they pretty much Tech recognizes Saw Gerrera as somebody who's been trained by Captain Rex and Anakin. And Crosshair this whole time is still like, just give me the order, Hunter, and I will kill all these people, right? And Hunter is like, dude, you're a little going overboard there, pretty much. Then they leave. They're like, you know what? Let's get out of here. These people are no harm. They got kids. They got, they're just, they're not separatists, right? Why would we kill them? So then we get back to Camino, and Crosshair is going to turn them in. But the reason he turns them in is because they notice that his inhibitor chip is, giving off, infecting him a little bit, right? And they actually put him in like this chamber, and they put him in this chamber, like medical thing, where they decide that they're going to shock the inhibitor chip to make him not be able to resist as much anymore. And what that does, obviously, is it turns Crosshair full Empire, pretty much. They are in like this cell, the rest of the Bad Batch, and they get out of this cell, and due to Omega, she climbs in this little spot that Wrecker was able to punch in. She falls out of the top, knocks out the debris, knocks out the troopers, and she's able to open up the doors, and they get out of there. And as they're trying to escape, Crosshair's there trying to shoot them, trying to get them to surrender. And Omega actually makes a really great shot when she's never handled a gun before. So I think that might be a little hint of what her... we also find out that she is the newest member of the Bad Batch, right? Like, she actually is a clone that has had some sort of upgrade, or however you want to kind of say that, like change to them to make them to make them one of the Bad Batch. How like Hunter's really good at hunting, and Tech is really good at tech stuff, and Crusher, Wrecker's really good at wrecking stuff, and Crosshair's really good at shooting, like this kind of stuff. And we don't really know what hers is right now. We don't really know what Omega is, what her purpose is. And we still don't know after episode 2. And I think that's going to be something we kind of learn about throughout the course of the season, maybe. And so Crosshair gets defeated. And they take off. The Camino in. The Nala Se is watching on like a data pad, and she actually stops the door from closing when Crosshair is trying to close it, and it lets them buy enough time to escape. And when she's talking to Lama Su, and Lama Su warns that they have to be cautious and do not mention anything about Omega until the Empire's intentions are clear. Which means it's going to be their little secret for right now. Let's talk a little bit about canon, right? And Kanan and Caleb. The people were kind of up in arms. A lot of fans were up in arms about the continuity here, because in the comic Star Wars Kanan, Captain Gray is a commander with red markings, not green markings. And he's a clone captain in this with green markings, because that's the kind of stuff Star Wars nerds are upset about. But also the main thing people are upset about is that Order 66 is completely different for Depa Billaba and Caleb in this series. So in the comic, they're still on the same planet, Collar. They're at a campground at night, and they're, like talking about, they're just talking, hanging out from this campfire. Then they get the call, and you get the same thing with Depa Billaba telling Caleb to run, and then he Kanan was hunted in the forest by the squad. So some people are upset that it's completely different in that sense. People have been trying to justify this as well by saying, well, Kanan had a drinking problem afterwards, and in this comic, he's actually like telling the story to somebody, and maybe could be misremembering it. Maybe the campfire happened the night before, and it's just kind of like the last moment where he felt like, you know, in good standing with the clones, that they're having a good time, and that it almost feels like a flick of the switch for him. But look, it's a continuity error. It's very minor. The event still happens on the same planet with the same people, just different time of day, different set of circumstances, and I think it works fine. I'd rather see it play out on this cartoon Bad Batch than in a comic book, and there's nobody else that they could have done. Like, the reason why they want to do this is kind of sow that doubt between Hunter and Crosshair of, you killed him, right? And Hunter's like, yeah, and he didn't. Without creating another Jedi for there to be out there that escaped Order 66. Because we're getting to a point where a lot of Jedi have escaped Order 66. So the fact is, to be able to reuse Caleb here, who eventually becomes Kanan, I think is a really good move. I think it works well. And that's kind of like the big thing people are upset about. So let's go ahead and talk about episode 2, Cut and Run. So they both premiered this week on Disney+. The first episode was on May 4th, and then this episode was on May 7th. And this is your standard length one. The first one was like 70 minutes. This one's 27. And they land on the planet Salakami, if I said that right. And they're going to meet an old friend. This friend is Cut. Cut is a deserter clone that originally appeared in an episode in season 2 called Deserter of the Clone Wars. And so we get to see Cut and his family again. He has a family. He's on this planet. He's, deserted from being a clone trooper. And their goal is to try to get off planet. But there's been some changes to the Empire, right? Like, they're asking for trip codes, or isn't that what they're called? Like trip codes. They're like these chain codes, which is where, think of it kind of like a social security number, I guess. That's what I would kind of assume, but galaxy-wide, I guess. And they need this chain code to be able to get in there. Obviously, Cut would have an issue because they would know he's a clone. They would know he's a deserter. And they would capture him and his family. So, the Bad Batch are trying to get Cut a chain code for his whole family. And, Omega's playing around with his kids. Like, she's kind of having this... She has this really great moment where she steps off and kind of like the sun's in her eyes. And, this is her first time seeing sun. She's never left Camino. And what we know from Camino is it's raining constantly. It's like Seattle up there. And then you get... sorry, I know Seattle's not actually all rain all the time. But then you have her, grabbing dirt. And she's like, what is this? And they're like, it's dirt. She's like, this is awesome. And she's, kicking the dirt around. She's throwing the dirt up in the air. It's great. It kind of reminds me of that scene in Force Awakens when Rey finally sees green. Like, she sees the forest on Takodana. And Harrison Ford, Han Solo is looking at her like, wow, I can't believe she'd never seen all this. And she's like, I can't believe there's been all this green, That's kind of what Omega's getting with just dirt, right? Like, she's seeing dirt, she's seeing grass, she's seeing the sun. Camino is literally just hunks of metal in water. Like, that's all they are, hovering over water. There's nothing else there. So she gets to experience all this stuff. Like, Rey would be like, dirt? I don't want dirt or sand, right? She'd be like Anakin in that sense, probably, because of Jakku. But in Takodana, it was always green as well. But with Omega, it's the dirt, it's green, it's grass, it's the sun, it's the blue sky. It's all this stuff that would be, amazing for her. So they, she's playing around with the kids. She's learning how to play catch and throw the ball and all this kind of stuff. And, they kind of learn for certain about the inhibitor chip. Tech already knew about the inhibitor chip. He's like how else would they control you, Hunter? But this is the first Hunter is actually hearing of the inhibitor chip when Omega says, yeah, that's what's going on. Like, it's an inhibitor chip that's controlling their actions. I assume at some point during the show they probably try to get Crosshair and take the chip out, I would hope, because I don't want Crosshair to be a villain the whole time, as much as a cool villain as he is like this deadly marksman. It's, it'd be like this family is missing somebody the whole time. So I really do hope that they're able to get Crosshair back. But, Omega is... she also had this experience at the end of the first episode where she saw Lightspeed for the first time. So she's kind of getting all these new experiences. She accidentally kicks the ball or throws the ball way off, right? Somebody can't catch it, and she has to go get it, but it's in this outside the fence area, and this creature that kind of looks like the creature from Attack of the Clones, I'm not sure if it's the same one, is going to eat her, I guess, right? And then the clones have to go help her, and Hunter's starting to scold her like, what were you doing? You could have been hurt. And Cut has to be like, she's not a soldier, and he has to comfort her, right? He's teaching Hunter how to be a dad or a big brother, depending on what their dynamic's going to be, but he's teaching them like, hey, this is just a kid. She's not a soldier. You can't, like soldiers in the Clone Wars have been kind of like where they will get kind of testy with each other, challenge each other. What were you doing? Why are you doing this? Omega doesn't respond that way. She feels like then she's doing something wrong. She is just a child, even though she is a clone. She's still a child, and she's not trained the same way that these clones were. So she Cut's kind of teaching Hunter in this scene how you handle this type of situation. This makes Hunter think that he can't take care of Omega and he needs to hand Omega off to Cut, and that it's safer for her to go with them once they get the chain codes. So then they have to do this chain code heist where Echo and Tech get an idea to call in the ship as if the ship, their ship, is abandoned, and then get it taken and captured into the spaceport so that way they can get close enough to get in there, steal some chain codes, or change the date, steal the data for chain codes and steal the disks, and then Tech would make their own chain codes. And they make 5, 1 for Omega and then 4 for the family. And Omega's on the ship when they do this plan. They didn't know it, but she went there to just kind of sit on the ship and kind of like, wallow in self-pity, I guess. And they do this plan, and then they have to try to protect Omega. They tell Omega to stay in there, stay in the ship, but she takes the chain codes and she goes out there because of all the troopers, and she thinks she can go around and get them to the family in time. She doesn't know that she's supposed to be going with the family. Once she makes it over there, Hunter tells her, she doesn't seem like she wants to go. The chain codes work, the family gets on, that part's done. But Omega didn't go with them, and now all of the Bad Batch are trying to fight their way out of the spaceport on the ship. They have to, they kind of like one of those like tire locks, like wheel locks, I guess. What are they called? Like boots or something that people put on when they're like towing their car. It's something like that, like a magnetic lock that's on the ship that they have to get off. It's not working for Echo. Like it will not, like his fake arm that is like the droid bit where he can kind of like hack into stuff. It's not responding to that. Wrecker comes and just wrecks it off. And they jump on, get out of there. And Omega and Hunter have a conversation where they actually say, like, if this is where you want to be, then this is where you'll be. And that's pretty much it for Cut and Run. A lot shorter of an episode, not as much to talk about, but it is a good character-based episode, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking really forward to episode 3, which is going to be this Friday coming up. So looking forward to that. We'll break that down next weekend. But so far, let's do a quick wrap-up. Really enjoying what I'm seeing from the Bad Batch, animation-wise and story-wise, character-wise. Hunter is my favorite so far. Second favorite is probably Tech. I really do like Tech. And But I'm loving all these characters. I was somebody that wasn't a big fan of the Bad Batch Clone Wars arc that happened in Season 7 because I was like, oh, it seems like filler, right? Like, I understand they were working on this episode a long time before the show got canceled originally in 2013, but I was kind of like not feeling the Bad Batch arc that much, but now I feel like I could go back and rewatch it and probably really enjoy it. At that point, it's like, oh, we're just getting introduced to these new characters and we're going to be trying to wrap up to the Seeds of Mandalore. I was just trying to get through to that last arc, and that last arc was amazing. But as somebody that wasn't a big fan of the Bad Batch arc in Season 7 to now, I'm like all in on the Bad Batch right now. This show has been great. The characters are great. We're getting way more characterization in these set of episodes than we did in the original arc, even after the pilot, after the Aftermath episode. I felt like I knew these characters so much better than I knew them in the Bad Batch arc in Clone Wars, that I really enjoy it. You know, I really do think that this is going to be a really great show. If it is 16 episodes, like they say, then I am buckling up for a great long season of learning about these characters. And Season 2 is rumored to be set for next summer. You know, animation, they usually have to get these head starts on stuff, so I'm assuming we will get a Season 2. There's been rumors of it being premiering next summer. And if that's the case, I'm really enjoying that. And then, you know, later this year we get Book of Boba Fett. And then early next year we should be getting Mando Season 3. We're at some point getting Cassian Andor. Maybe even Obi-Wan next year, even though I think that's more of a 2023 thing. Hey, we got a lot of Star Wars to look forward to before the next movie even gets out. So we got a lot of cartoons, a lot of TV shows to look forward to here. There's rumored of other animation projects being worked on. We'll see if that's true or not. But again, I just can't say it enough. I've really enjoyed this episode and both these episodes, and really so far enjoy the story of the Bad Batch. So if you want to reach out to us here, you can contact us on Twitter at Pod Awakens. You can go ahead and send us any feedback there, or, what you thought on the Bad Batch, what you're looking forward to. I'm hoping to do an episode soon that is going to be recapping some of that Disney Investor Day stuff. That was back when we were still on kind of like a hiatus, so we didn't get to cover any of that stuff. And just kind of saying, I'm not going to go too in-depth with everything in that because there's been other podcasts that have covered it at this point, but I'm going to probably shed some light on what I'm looking forward to the most out of those newly announced projects and stuff like that. So we'll probably do one of those coming up here as well. But thanks everybody for listening, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Can't wait to talk Bad Batch Episode 3.
I have spoken.